My wife flirted with my boss at a work party, so I sent the security footage to HR and left her before she made it home. I'm a 34-year-old guy. And the night my wife humiliated me in front of my entire team was supposed to be a celebration. I'd just been promoted to senior project manager at a tech firm I'd been grinding away at for almost 8 years. It wasn't some massive CO-level jump, but it meant something to me. Recognition, stability, a sense that I was finally moving up after years of being overlooked. My team planned a formal party on the rooftop bar of a nice hotel cocktail attire, live jazz, open bar. It was supposed to be a clean, classy night. I invited my wife Lila because, of course I did. She's part of my life. Or, she's supposed to be. Even as I typed out her name in the RSVP email, something in me hesitated. Lila has this thing about attention, about needing to be the most in every room. She'll say it's just confidence, but I've seen it morph into something else, something reckless. Still, I told myself not to be controlling. Don't make a big deal out of nothing, I thought. She'll be fine. She showed up 40 minutes late. Everyone had already taken their seats at the reserve section when she walked in. Heels clicking like gunshots. Red silk dress cut way too high for the tone of the event. Heads turned. Conversations paused. And Lila, she loved it. She gave me a wink, tossed her coat at a hostess without a word, and made a beeline for the bar. By the time she sat next to me, she already had a full martini in her hand and was giggling like she'd pregned in the Uber. "Congrats, babe," she said, slurring just slightly. "You're finally a real boss now, huh?" I smiled for the crowd, but in my gut, I felt something sharp twist. Something I chose to ignore. For now, Lila wasn't just tipsy. She was putting on a performance. The way she laughed at jokes that weren't funny. The way she threw her head back just a little too far when someone said anything remotely clever. The way she casually brushed her fingers over my coworker's shoulder as she thanked him for the drink he didn't even offer. I felt like I was watching someone audition for a role no one asked for. And I was already cringing internally when my boss, James, walked over. Now, James is a tall, sharp-dressed guy in his 40s. Confident, respected. The kind of presence that fills a room. I've worked under him for nearly 4 years, and he's always kept things strictly professional. When he approached, I stood to shake his hand and introduce him to Lila, hoping, praying she'd keep it cool. She didn't. "Oh wow," she said, placing her hand firmly on James's bicep. "You're James. You did not tell me your boss looked like a movie star?" I laughed it off awkwardly. "Lila, this is James. James, my wife." James smiled politely and nodded, but Lila wasn't done. She leaned in close and whispered something I couldn't hear over the music. Whatever it was made James clear his throat and step slightly back. Lila pouted. "Oh, I'm just being friendly," she said, swaying slightly as she sipped from her glass. I locked eyes with one of my teammates across the room, Erica, from DevOps. She looked at me with a silent, uncomfortable pity that burned hotter than any words. "I'm fine," I mouthed. I wasn't. That's when I noticed it just above the bar, angled down over the seating area. A black security camera with a blinking red light. Watching, recording. I wasn't sure why I fixated on it at that moment, but something told me I might need that footage. An hour later, the party was in full swing. Jazz band playing, people laughing, lights from the city spilling in through the glass panels. It should have been the best night of my career, but all I could do was keep my eyes on Lila. Every time I turned away, she drifted further from me. First the next table, then the bar, then the dance floor. She wasn't dancing, though. She was talking to James. I tried to stay calm. Maybe it was harmless. Maybe she was just networking, right? Except she had one hand resting on the bar beside his drink, and she was standing way too close. Her laugh carried through the crowd, sharp and bright, like glass shattering. My stomach tightened as I started making my way toward them. Then I heard it. A whisper. Soft, but cutting through the music just enough to reach me. "You know," she said, leaning in close to James, "if I wasn't married." The world blurred for a second. James froze, looking like he wanted to vanish. He stepped back, awkwardly grabbing his drink. "Lila, that's not appropriate," he muttered. But she just smirked, brushing his tie with her finger like she was teasing him for being shy. People noticed. I could feel the shift in the room. A few glances. Some whispers. One of my colleagues turned away quickly when our eyes met, pretending to check her phone. My hands went cold. I forced a tight smile and excused myself to the restroom before I said or did something stupid inside. I gripped the sink and stared at my reflection. My chest was pounding. My face felt hot. I didn't know whether I wanted to scream, cry, or walk out and never look back. I splashed water on my face and whispered to myself, "Don't make a scene. Not here." But something had broken. I could feel it. When I walked back out, I wasn't looking for Lila anymore. I was looking for that security camera. That night didn't break me. It revealed what had already been broken for a long time. After we got home, Lila crashed on the couch like nothing had happened. Makeup smudged, shoes tossed aside, still humming some tune from the jazz band. I stood in the hallway, just watching her. Not as a husband. As a stranger trying to make sense of someone Kate been sleeping beside for 6 years. I thought about the time she flirted with my barber, right in front of me. The time she got too drunk at my friend's wedding and told him he should have been the groom. The DMs I once found from a personal trainer that she claimed were just compliments. And every single time I let it slide. Because she would laugh, apologize, say I was being sensitive or insecure. "It's just harmless fun," she'd say. "You know I love you." And like a fool, I believed it. I told myself love was about trust, that she was just spirited, that I shouldn't be the guy who polices his wife's social life. But this time felt different. This wasn't playful. This wasn't harmless. This was her actively crossing a line in public, in front of my coworkers, and more importantly, in front of my boss. And she didn't care. The next morning, she woke up groggy, barely remembering the night. Or at least pretending not to. "Did I embarrass you?" she said with a sleepy grin, sipping coffee like we were talking about karaoke. Not a public betrayal. I didn't answer. I couldn't, because deep down, I realized something I had avoided for years. Lila never respected me. She liked the way I loved her. She liked the stability, the image, the spotlight, but she never saw me as someone worth honoring when I wasn't watching, and I was done ignoring that 3 days later. A padded envelope arrived at my office no-return address, just the hotel's logo printed in the corner. Inside was a USB drive labeled with the date and time of the party. I stared at it for a long minute before plugging it into my work laptop. I told myself I didn't need to see it, that I already knew what happened. But I needed proof. Not for others, for me. Proof that I wasn't crazy. That my gut wasn't lying to me. The footage was brutal. There she was, smiling wide, pressing her hand against James's chest, laughing like she was on a date. The moment she tried to feed him cake off her fork, that was the one that made me clench my jaw so tight it hurt. He looked uncomfortable. She didn't care. Every second screamed, "This woman is not just being friendly. This is sabotage disguised as flirtation." I sat back in my chair and just stared at the screen. My throat felt tight. My hands were cold again. Just like that night. Then I opened Outlook. I started typing an email to HR with the subject line, "Inappropriate conduct at company event footage attached." I kept it professional, detached, just the facts, the video, the context, my concern as an employee. I made it clear I didn't want James fired, I just wanted the record to reflect what happened. That this was unacceptable. That boundaries do matter. I hovered over the send button. This wasn't just about my wife. This was about how little I'd been protecting myself. I hit send, and for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt in my marriage in a long, long time. Control. I expected fallout. Maybe a stern response. Maybe silence. But I didn't expect a phone call the next morning. Double quotes, "Hi. This is Dana from HR. Do you have a few minutes to talk about the footage you submitted?" My heart sank. I thought I was in trouble. That somehow this would get flipped on me. That I'd get written up for dragging personal drama into the workplace. I stepped into an empty conference room, shut the door, and braced for it. But Dana's tone was calm to calm. "First, just want to say we're sorry you had to experience that," she said. This wasn't the first report we've received from that evening. I blinked. Wait, what? Turns out, multiple coworkers had already come forward. One said they felt uncomfortable by how Lila was behaving toward James. Another said she overheard Lila making explicitly inappropriate comments near the bar. Someone else mentioned that James should have intervened, but didn't. I sat down. Stunned, they weren't calling to discipline me. They were calling to thank me for confirming what others had already flagged. Dana said they were reviewing James's handling of the situation. And while the video didn't show him actively encouraging it, his silence spoke volumes. "We expect our leadership to model boundaries," she said. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just a messy personal embarrassment. It was a professional liability. A reflection of character theirs, not mine. I hung up the phone and just sat there. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. And most importantly, I wasn't alone in seeing what happened. But Lila didn't know any of this yet. And that gave me time. Time to plan what came next. Without her suspecting a thing, Lila had no idea I was done to her. Everything was back to normal. She started planning a weekend getaway for the two of us, some kind of reconnection retreat she found on Instagram. Sent me a link with heart emojis like she hadn't just wrecked my career celebration in front of half my office. Like she hadn't whispered betrayal right into my boss's ear. I played along, smiled, said we'd talk about it soon. She thought we were fine. But I wasn't planning a vacation, was planning my escape. That week, while she worked late shifts at the clinic, I cleared out our apartment piece by piece. I took my documents, my personal files, my grandmother's watch, the cufflinks I wore at our wedding, every trace of myself. I closed joint accounts, changed passwords, rerouted my mail to a P.O. box. I even called our landlord and arranged to have the lease transferred into her name. I did it all quietly. No confrontation. No final argument. Just logistics. Like closing a chapter. Like erasing a name from a folder before it infects the whole drive. The last thing I did was leave a note. Not poetic. Not emotional. Just truth. You embarrassed me publicly. I will protect myself privately. Do not contact me. I folded it. Placed it on the dining table next to the untouched couple's retreat. Brochure she printed on, walked out by the time she got home. I was already in a furnished rental across town with my phone turned off. I don't know how she reacted. I didn't need to. Because for once, her chaos wasn't mine to manage. All I know is that she called. And called. And when the texts didn't go through, she sent one final voice memo. Her voice was breaking, gasping. I didn't do anything. I deleted it. I thought leaving would be the hard part. Turns out, staying gone was worse. The silence should have felt peaceful, but it didn't. It felt loud, like all the unresolved echoes of my marriage were bouncing off the walls of my new apartment. I kept expecting someone to knock, to scream, to demand I explain myself. But the knock never came. Instead, my father called. "Hey, son. Just spoke to Lila." I froze. The phone nearly slipped from my hand. "She's a mess," he continued, like that explained anything. "Crying, says she doesn't understand why you walked out. She told us it was just a misunderstanding, something about a joke that got blown out of proportion." I didn't respond right away. Because what was I supposed to say? That she flirted with my boss. That I had video evidence. That she'd humiliated me and didn't even remember, or worse, didn't care. "I get it," he added after a pause. "Women can get carried away. But divorce, that seems a bit extreme." I sat down slowly, heart pounding. "So let me get this straight. You talked to her first." "She called your mother," he said. "She was scared." Scared. Not sorry. Not honest. Lila went to my family before I could. She got to them first. Spun her story. Played the victim. And just like that, the people who raised me, the ones who should have known better, started. Planting doubt in my head, my mom texted me that night. "Relationships take work. Don't throw away something good over one bad night." One bad night. It wasn't one night. It was years of paper cuts finally bleeding through the bandage. And now the people I counted on to see me were treating me like the one who overreacted. I turned off my phone. Sat in the dark. Felt more alone than I ever had. That night, I didn't sleep. I just unraveled. Something in me snapped that night. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the gaslighting afterward. The way Lila twisted the truth. The way my own family doubted me, like I was too emotional to trust my own eyes. I felt like I was going insane. Like maybe I really had blown it out of proportion, so I did what I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. At first, it felt petty. But I needed clarity. I needed the truth laid out in black and white, stripped of charm, denial, or twisted memory. Closure, not revenge. Just facts. 3 days later, I got the report. Turns out, Lila had a pattern. She'd flirted her way out of a written warning at her last job, some issue with a manager she was a little too friendly with. The PI found screenshots from a fitness forum where her old trainer had posted anonymously, but with identifying details about a married client who kept crossing boundaries and showing up unannounced. Even worse, she was engaged before me. I knew about him, sort of. She called it a toxic relationship that ended badly. What she didn't tell me was that he'd called off the wedding 3 weeks before the date, citing trust issues. Apparently, he had found messages between her and one of his YROOMS men. My throat went dry reading all this. The woman I thought I'd built a life with. She was just a different version of herself every time. Always the victim. Always rewriting the story depending on who was listening. And somehow, I had become the latest chapter in a pattern that started long before I ever showed up. I emailed her one last time. Attached the PI report. No message. No threats. Just silence and proof. She replied within an hour. "Wow, you went digging for dirt instead of trying to fix us. Pathetic." That was the last time I ever heard from her, and for once, I didn't respond. Weeks passed. I poured myself into work, quietly, professionally, like nothing had happened. I didn't gossip. I didn't vent. I just kept showing up, delivering, leading my team. The whispers faded. The awkward glances stopped. People moved on, but HR hadn't. On a Monday morning, I got an email marked confidential. The internal review was complete. James, my boss, was officially reprimanded for failing to report inappropriate behavior at a corporate event. HR labeled it a lapse in judgment that compromised the professional tone of leadership. He wasn't fired, but he was reassigned to a non-leadership role in another division. A quiet demotion, a public message. As for Lila, she didn't work for the company. But the HR report made it very clear she would no longer be permitted at any future corporate events, internal or external. Her name was flagged. Employees were told to report any contact from her at professional functions. It wasn't just about what she did to me. It was about how she disrupted the workplace, violated boundaries, and made others uncomfortable. Word spread faster than I expected. People who used to smile politely at her stopped mentioning her altogether. Our mutual friends started fading into silence. I heard through someone on the fringe that she had to move back in with her parents, that her own social circle dried up. After she tried to play the abandoned wife, and people started asking questions she couldn't answer. I never gloated. I never posted a thing. I just watched Karma land with the slow, quiet force of gravity, undeniable, invisible, and irreversible. I didn't need revenge. I had reality on my side. And the thing about reality? It doesn't need to shout. It just waits, and it always shows up. There's a strange kind of peace that comes after the storm, when everything's broken. But at least it's yours again. I moved into a small furnished apartment on the east side of the city. Nothing fancy, just clean floors, white walls, and silence. No scent of Leela's perfume. No shoes in the hallway that weren't mine. No second toothbrush next to the sink. For the first time in years, the space around me felt safe. I started therapy. Not because I thought I was broken, but because I was tired of patching myself up alone. The first session, I sat there in silence for 15 minutes before finally saying, "I think I've spent most of my marriage confusing attention for affection." The therapist just nodded, and something cracked open inside me. I started going to the gym again, lifting, not to impress anyone, but just to feel strong. I dusted off my old DSLR and wandered the city on weekends, taking photos of random things, rusty fire escapes. Foggy mornings, streetlights caught in rain. I relearned the joy of doing things that didn't need to be posted, approved, or praised one afternoon while waiting in line for coffee. A coworker from another department recognized me. "You look different," she said, smiling. In a good way. I didn't even hesitate. "I am," I replied. It wasn't about her, or James, or HR, or even the betrayal. It was about remembering the man I was before I shrank to make someone else feel big. I had spent so long being careful, apologizing, making peace for two now. I was finally allowed to just exist without shrinking, without explaining, without apologizing for demanding basic respect. And that feeling? It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, steady, like healing disguised as a Tuesday. She never made it home that night. Not really? Sure. She stepped into the apartment, probably kicked off her heels, tossed her clutch on the couch, and called out my name like nothing had happened. But by then, I was already gone. My keys left on the counter. My presence deleted from the lease. My loyalty severed the moment she chose to humiliate me in front of the very people who celebrated my growth. She didn't come home. She returned to a place where I used to live, and I don't think she's ever quite accepted that. People think betrayal is loud and a affair, a lie, a slap across the face. But it's not always like that. Sometimes betrayal sounds like a fake laugh. Looks like a hand on the wrong shoulder. Sometimes it walks in the room with you and smiles at your boss like you're the one who's invisible. Lila didn't destroy me. She revealed me, revealed how little I'd been protecting myself, how long I'd been making excuses. How deep I was willing to bury my own self-worth just to keep the peace in a war she kept starting. I still have the USB drive. It sits in a drawer I barely open next to old tax documents and the user manual for a blender I no longer own. I don't revisit it. I don't need to. The memory is etched into me not as pain, but as proof. Proof that I didn't imagine it. Proof that walking away was the most honest thing I've ever done. These days, I end my workday quietly. I close my laptop. Water my plants. Maybe go for a walk. And every once in a while, I think about that rooftop party the night I was supposed to be celebrated, and I smile, because that was the night I stopped clapping for people who never clapped for me.